Hello, guys. Welcome, welcome. I'm so glad that you can make it tonight. I'm super pumped about our guest tonight. So before I introduce Chris, um, you know, Nancy and I and Michelle and I and our whole team, we're investigative journalists, so we talk a lot about what's wrong, right? What research we found, what problems we've discovered, and all of you're writing in and calling us and saying, "Hey, I appreciate that. We need it. We got to have the facts. We got to have the evidence, right?" But there's not nearly enough of what to do. Tonight, we're going to shine a light on what we can do to fight back as parents. So, um, I read this book. I read Chris's book about a year ago. This is Rules for Defeating Radicals, and it gave tips on how to fight back against radical progressives. Who are hell bent on bringing this country down and ushering in Marxism. We're seeing it now. People from all stripes are seeing it now. So Chris Adamo is a mentor of mine. I must admit, I called Chris, or I reached out to him months ago, and I said, "Hey, your book is a guidebook for me, and I love what you do." And so he agreed to be on with us tonight, and I am so happy to introduce Chris. Hello, my friend.
Hello, and let me just also say it is an honor. I've been watching the fight you have been conducting with these other folks from your area, and it's a valiant fight, and it needs to catch fire across the nation. I mean, I'm seeing and hearing things constantly that says that if we think that sitting the fence or trying to be nice and kind of finesse our way back to some sort of normality is going to happen, we're kidding ourselves. We're in a full-fledged frontal assault on our families, on our children, on our way of life, and it's not going to go easy if we try to take the easy way out.
No, there is no easy way out. And people on the right side of the aisle have abandoned this fight for years, saying, "Hey, as long as my
Mhm.
candidate does school choice, I'm fine." This is not a political issue. This is about saving the country. And we have people, Chris, from all stripes wanting to come in and get in the fight, and they see what's going on. I mean, we are in a culture war. Not only that, a war for the soul of our country, and certainly for our children. And so this is a moral call, and a patriotic call to get up and start doing something.
Absolutely, and I would add to that when you call it a moral call, you're absolutely right. It is not something that you can have a neutral response to.
Mhm.
Neutrality is, if you remember Dietrich Bonhoeffer, what he said is silence in the face of evil is itself evil. It sounds like we're rabble rousers, and of course we're going to be called hate mongers and troublemakers and stuff. No, the trouble is being caused by the opposition. We have got to rise to the occasion and deal with it, or accept it, roll over and surrender to it. Those are the only two options.
Right. Yeah, those are the only two options. A lot of people tell us that, well, I mean, we have a lot of people in our coalition that are abolitionists, right? I mean, they believe in the public schools should be shut down, et cetera. They don't get that the battlefield is the school system right now. And again, we're Americans. In America, we do not allow human rights abuses to occur on a mass scale, especially at the hands of our own government. We fight. I mean, how many years ago were we giving money to Ethiopians that were being mistreated, and for good cause, might I add? And now we have this in our own backyard. We have to fight. I don't care if you don't have kids, you don't like kids, whatever it is, you have a duty to do that. Now,
Yeah, we homeschooled for all of our three sons for their entire 12 years, and I can tell you one of the saddest things that I ever encountered among the homeschoolers was leave them alone, maybe they'll leave us alone. And the question is, do you really think when they're in there, and I'm talking about the left here, I'm talking about the countercultural left, when they're in there and they're doing everything they can to indoctrinate these kids in the public school, the last thing they want is one critical thinker amongst them to say, "Hey, the emperor has no clothes." If
right.
that person is there, they've got to go after them. So if you're sitting off in your little sequestered 5 acres feeling nice and safe because you homeschool, you don't have to deal with this. You really think they're going to let you raise your kids to be beacons of light among the rest of them? If they're controlling the laws and the legislative process and the governmental offices and things, if you think that they're just going to leave you alone, you're naive, dangerously naive.
Right now, I think people understand. Thank you, Eric, for sharing this. Eric has been just an unbelievable warrior for years, and even has, nudged me when I've been down in the dumps and thinking about, oh, I can't do this anymore. Eric is my Freedom Works buddy, and he's been, out there carrying the torch. And so let's talk about, we know what's happening. So let's set the table a little bit. I mean, we understand that. Let's go big to large. So we understand that nationally, the Department of Justice has gone just absolutely. The mask is off. We know who they are. All of their enemies seem to be within the U.S. borders, with the FBI, with CIA, even, and now DOJ. So we understand that they issued a call on or about October 4th to. We're going to be looking into parents who are protesting. So that's big scale. North Carolina, check this out. We kicked it off early. We, meaning the state superintendent, who calls herself a Republican, on September 28th, issues a statement that says, I'm paraphrasing, we don't want any more violent acts out here, parents. Stop doing it. That day, the National School Board Association, to lend itself credibility, posts her statement up on their website. And the day after, that's when this big statement came out.
Yeah, it's coordinated. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing that, again, that our side has done really wrong for years, and I won't give you my whole life story tonight, but I lived in Wyoming from about 1986 to 2018, and we fought the culture war against the leftist counterculture in Wyoming. Yes. For 30 years out of that. And I can tell you that the biggest fight we had was within the GOP. That's not to say that everybody who calls himself Republican is corrupt, but the minute they put that label on that says GOP, in Wyoming, all you have to do is avoid talking about a state income tax or the Second Amendment. You can call yourself a Republican and get away with it. And, right now, the real grassroots conservatives in Wyoming are just reeling over the fact they've got Liz Cheney as their sole representative for the whole state of Wyoming. And they're appalled at that. Well, that was not something that happened overnight. That happened as a result of a long-standing move within the Wyoming Republican Party to basically ignore the citizenry while claiming to be Republican. Stay away from those two issues, get in there and start governing like a bunch of Vermont Democrats. And as long as you don't threaten the Second Amendment, hunting rights, or propose a state income tax, people will try to go about their business. I mean, we as conservatives don't really want to be out there pushing an agenda on everybody. We want to be left alone, and they take advantage of that.
Well, I'll tell you, this is a great time to just say this, that people from both sides of the aisle, this is a problem for both sides. And we have a lot of people in our coalition who are teachers, people that have never voted, et cetera. So I want to explain to everyone what we're going to tell you tonight. This is party agnostic, right? We are policy people. This is, who's made this political is really far left progressive. So let's get into what this is. This is, the censorship. We're talking about the censorship. And, my advice, and I'm sure, I think you would concur, right? When somebody tells me to shut the hell up, good luck, right?
I've gotten to know you well enough by now. And
you know me.
More power to you.
You know me. And that's what I want to encourage everyone to do, because there's strength in numbers. We have the numbers. Right. You pointed out. So we've got the momentum on our side. And so we encourage, when they say give less speech, give more. Let's talk about what kind of speech. I love I think it's chapter 2. It's the hypocrisy. Yes, I am right. Hypocrisy, not a liability to the leftists. This drives me insane when we think, right? Because when you're talking to a leftist, you guys, and I'm saying leftist, I'm talking about not political leftist. I'm talking about ideological, right? You point out their hypocrisy and you think that that's going to stop their momentum. They blow right by it.
Absolutely. They start from the perception that they are morally impeccable. And I will have to throw in one thing here. I hope this doesn't throw a huge wrench in the works, but when you talk about not political, from the sense of party lines, it's not overwhelmingly political, because what you have is you have hardcore leftists, which are the core of the Democrat Party, and then you have hardcore leftist hypocrites and light beer leftists that permeate the Republican Party. And then you have real conservative America. Well, we've seen on occasion that real conservative America is a huge number of people We haven't voted real smart because we thought, well, if they got the R by their name, they actually stand with us. No, they don't. But this, from an ideological perspective, you do have two huge camps, and you can call it pro-America and anti-America, pro-Christian, anti-Christian, however you want to phrase it. But there are two huge camps. One of them seeks honesty and straightforwardness. The other one, from the start, their ideology was founded in Marxism. Marxism was founded in lies. They're not going to advance lies honestly. I mean, that's a total absurdity. They're going to use the lies. They're going to use the hypocrisy, back to what you were talking about a minute ago. And if we play the game on the basis that we need to try to show them we're not what they say we are and things like that. We're playing a defensive game. A defensive game means you're going to lose. It's only a matter of a question of when.
Right. So let me tell you what this looks like in practice. So this weekend is a great example. This weekend on our Facebook page, and that is Education First Alliance, you should check it out. We posted a statement from a school board member here in Orange County about the pornography books, right? There's a lot of pornography going around, and she was basically saw peddling it. Well, we had a ton of militant activists on our webpage. I mean, the typical, you're dumb, you're ignorant, blah, blah. But the main argument was, you're being mean to gay people. And so you don't engage in intellectualizing that, no, I'm not, et cetera. And to your point, proving we're not. You point out the obvious, and it is, to suggest that gay people want pornography peddled to children, that is a lie, and it's insulting to gay people, because that's the truth. So I would recommend finding where the militants will lump in an entire community.
They paint with that broad brush, absolutely.
And use them. And so that seemed to get us a lot of traction, Chris.
Well, the other one, though, that's always obvious to me, having to do with voter ID. And it's those poor, stupid Black people there. It's so difficult for them to get proper ID. They can't possibly be expected to fulfill the basic obligations of citizenship to prove who they are. And so, and it's absolutely condescending and contemptuous of minorities to start by saying it's too hard for them. I will also throw in there, back to the hypocrisy, that the same people who are saying it's too hard for them to get proper voter ID want them all to have vaccine passports. So there's no moral consistency to it. But the idea that this, I'm sure we'll talk about critical race theory in greater depth. The idea is that, no, you people are victims. What are they saying? They're saying you're actually second-class citizens. Yeah, we'll sit you up in the front of the bus because we're such good people, but you're really not capable of getting up there on your own. And so you need us to spoon feed you and to and it's total contempt. It's total bigotry and contempt. And when you paint with that kind of a broad brush, you're categorizing people.
We need to point this out, guys. We need to point this out left and right, is that don't point out a progressive's hypocrisy, because it just won't work. In other words, saying that, oh, you said this, but you said this, is just not a winner. The winner is that the people, and just look, the brighter the image, the darker the negative. You understand what I'm saying? And so you have to remember that people that are brightly imagining, oh, you're doing this to these people, in that conversation, in these statements, you're going to find they're perpetrating the very bigotry they're accusing you of, and use that and point it out, because it'll be the facts.
Yeah. And again, I'll put in a little plug for my book there. When you spend your time trying to convert, thank you. You spend your time trying to convert the leftist activists, you're wasting your time. What you need to do, you say, don't point it out to them. No, they're never going to concede to it. They will tell a new lie to cover last week's lie. We look at Jen Psaki, she's going to circle back. She's going to come up with an answer that's a non-answer. But what you need to be doing consistently is not to convert them, but the people in the middle who are watching and trying to figure out where is ground zero, where is reality, is take a look at what they just said. Look at what they said 2 weeks ago. They contradict themselves. These people are hypocrites. They're leftists. They start by being hypocrites. Once you establish that in people's minds, once people have grasped the fact that this agenda, this ideology is deceitful, is two-faced, and it's not morally consistent, from that point forward, their hypocrisy glares on its own. It spotlights itself. You
talk about branding heroes and using labels, and I love that. as a technique. Tell us about, just give an example of how we would use that to school board members who are bullying us.
Bullying is a great word. As a matter of fact, I mentioned that specifically there in that discussion, that the bullies that they're talking about is anybody who disagrees with them. Anybody, when they come in with their countercultural agenda and, they're trying to convince boys to dress like girls and stuff like that. And you say, no, you're not doing that to my kid. My kid, like all kids, they're growing up, they're learning, they're trying to find out about themselves. They might be confused at some point. You're not going to take my kid and deliberately steer them wrong. Right. That's not bullying. It's when the system attacks the parent who tries to stand against that. There's your bullying. There's your systemic bullying. It comes from the left on the school boards, in the administrations, in the front office of schools, and sadly in too many classrooms where you got teachers that are embracing this ideology and they're parading in front of these kids. And the kid that stands up and says, hey, wait a minute, God made boys different from girls, and that kid gets humiliated in front of everybody. There's your bullying.
Yeah, there's your bullying. You need to point it out. I mean, and then, you talk about, strategically using moral certitude and how these conversations go. And we've all been there, right? We've had a conversation with a teacher who, makes us feel badly about what we're doing. Tell us about how the left uses that as a club to hammer us with.
Well, the number one thing, and we've had, it was 1991, the first time we got involved with some friends whose child was being peddled garbage in the classroom in Wheatland, Wyoming. This is middle America. It doesn't happen here. It only happens back in, those big regions, populated regions like North Carolina. No, this was Wheatland, Wyoming. And the kid was being fed a bunch of moral garbage, and the parents went to the school to complain. And tell me this, if you've heard this before, the number one thing that parents hear when they show up at the school and they say, hey, my kid just got shown this.
I never hear that.
You're the only parent that complained.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And what do they do there? All of a sudden you feel like, wow, am I making trouble over nothing? See, if you start by accepting their premise instead of saying, no, you're a liar. I know 16 other people that are mad about this, and I'll find 50 more when I tell them about it. And you put them on the defensive. If instead of that, you come back and say, well, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be a troublemaker and all that. All of a sudden now you're trying to prove that you're not what they're accusing you of. And at that point, you're playing that defensive game. Never apologize. Never apologize unless you've actually done something wrong, but you don't let the enemy tell you you've done something wrong. I mean, if you misquote something, you say that well, for example, for me, I said that the superintendent from South Carolina was such a proponent of critical race theory. Well, I get North and South Carolina mixed up because I'm at the other end of the country here. And I should have said North Carolina. Okay, Truett, North Carolina. I should have got that straight. Sorry, folks. I made a little mistake there. It wasn't a fundamental ideological error. I didn't actually undermine my whole argument. I made a little mistake. I need to correct that. Now that's corrected. Yeah. Let's move on. Now this doesn't mean that Catherine Truett gets a pass going forward, or the next week it turns out that the South Carolina school superintendent is actually just as bad, that they get a pass because I falsely accused them. So what we got to do is, when we say never apologize, when you apologize, it's for something you recognize you got wrong, and it's not because of the accusation of the opposition, because they will accuse you on any basis. Right, and they'll get you to apologize. And again, I mean, the way that we train people here in our boot camps is we do role play. So we'll have parents role play with each other. One is gaslighting. Right. And then the other one's not, because it's horrible to resist the gaslighting. Like, it takes practice. Yeah. I mean, I can't believe that you're bigoted like this. I can't believe it. And so it does take practice. And we do encourage you to role play. So I want to talk about some of the mistakes that parents make. Number one is not having the evidence. And we rarely see this, but we do see parents will go in and say, I watched Tucker Carlson last night, and I just know there's critical race theory in their school. I mean, they're probably right. Right. But having concrete examples is the best way to do it. It's the only way to do it. And that way you're more credible. So you're walking in, you've got something, and you're not going to be easily, misled. But I'll tell you another thing too, is it's not just having the evidence, it's having the right place to draw your fire.
a lot of
Yeah,
times,
pick your battles.
yeah, I mean, and I'm going to tell you that, and this is terrible, but, a lot of people are going to school meetings here in North Carolina, and a bunch of the problem is on the state level.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got to figure that out. And so you've got to have a good mix. And so those are the two things. But again, once you're at the state level, in any level, you have to understand that this happens, right? It's not me. They did it. And so that is why knowledge is power. Having the evidence and knowing where to direct your fire is important, because then you cannot be, led in all different directions. When you're in that meeting, you can own it, Chris.
Yes, and let me clarify one thing. When you want, as you said, people to get educated and get organized.
Yes.
Now, having said that, understand the fact, I'll give you the classic example. I think they perfected it, is the Clintons. When you put them in the hot seat, they never answer a question. They always answer it with another question that sends you looking for more information. Instead of saying, no, you did commit whatever crime. We would pick your crime. The Clintons committed it, from murder to anything else. But you did this. And it's like, Hillary says, what, wipe it with a cloth? Hillary, somebody should have shot right back at her right then. You know exactly what we're talking about. And you're obstructing justice by trying to deflect it onto this thing that you're acting so ignorant of, because they will do that. They will, no matter how much information you have, it's never enough. And if they say, well, go back and find me examples of, of such and such, well,
exactly.
You're going to waste time. You're going to come back and they're going to dismiss it on some basis.
Right. Yeah. So don't let that happen. Absolutely. Do not let that happen. Actually know when you go in there, this is what happened. This is where it came from, etc.
And don't try to deny it, people, because we know it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and another thing too is, here's a big one, parents. You have to know your goal. Let me give you an example. When you say, oh, my goal is just to expose it, that's not usually, in my experience, what happens. So a parent will say, they'll leave a principal's office crestfallen because they thought their goal was to express this and to tell someone.
And then the honest person would have fixed the problem from there.
Yeah, but in reality, Chris, they should say, no, this was what happened, and this is what I want to happen. I want fired, I want this, etc. In other words, you need to understand that if it's to make it known, you could say it on Facebook. If it's to make it known, that's easy. That's a layup. But when you decide and when you train your guns, I'm not talking about in the Alec Baldwin sense. I'm talking about I can't stop. I'm talking because it's serious. You got to accept responsibility for that. But anyway, when you set your sights on a goal, you got to achieve that goal. In other words, you got to say, I went to the principal, it didn't work. All right, what am I willing to do next? You've got to be able to go all out and achieve these goals.
Let's start with the big picture. The goal is to stop this stuff from happening in the classrooms. Okay. Yes. Now, granted, we can't just wave a magic wand to make that happen, but we start by spotting the teacher who's teaching it. And I want that teacher out of the classroom. Oh, the school administration gave them that material to distribute to those kids. We're going to go after the school administration. Again, in all of these cases, that sounds like a big wish list.
Yeah.
But the problem is, unless we address it that way, these were wrongs that were committed. And frankly, when some of the pictures that you've shown there in recent weeks, these are crimes against these kids.
Yes,
if these had been shown in somebody's garage, somebody'd be going to jail. They're being shown in the classroom. And that's even worse, because that's not only the obscenity and the vile perversion that these kids are being exposed to, but it's being done with this official stamp of virtue and approval on it. Okay, I want that stopped. And it's not enough to say, well, okay, we're going to talk to that teacher. No, I'm not going to sit around and try and watch that teacher and every other teacher going forward to make sure it doesn't happen again for 1 week, 2 weeks, and then a minute I'm out not looking, it happens again. No, that teacher has already proven that he or she has breached our trust as parents, and we want them out of there. First of all, that teacher can't be trusted. Secondly, you're sending a signal at that point to every other teacher who thinks that their position in school is to open your child's mind to their twisted sexual desires or whatever. Everyone that thinks that way has been put on notice.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, and you have to mean business. So for us in our organization, here's what it means. We tried it at the school level, then we tried it at the superintendent level, and we worked all the way up till, wow, you mean to tell me that the state is responsible for, 80% of this, whether they're incentivizing with funding or standards or whatever. And then you have to attune yourself from there, but you have to, be very sophisticated. So in North Carolina and the other chapters that we have, even in California and Illinois, we're pretty active. So what we have done is sort of figure out, okay, let's look at the constellation of people that make this possible. We didn't know it was lobbyists. Yes, there are lobbyists at your state house that will push for these radical ideas. There are lobbyists that work for 501c3s like we have, but they're on the left.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have lobbyists. Now, who else? Well, we have, sadly, politicians who are going to be taking money and doing things. Then we have the critical race theory companies. I mean, it's a business. So
it's a stage 4 cancer is what you're saying.
Yeah. And you have to go at all levels, you guys. You have to identify, because the system that makes this possible, you have to bring down the system. So if and I want to give you guys heart, is that we only need 20% of people to be uncompromising, hard-nosed, and radical like us. Then we can reshape what's going on in the body politic. And we're doing that.
Which is exactly the reason, by the way, if I may add, exactly the reason that I think your people from North Carolina there got in a backroom deal with Merrick Garland to label you as terrorists.
I do. I mean, Panorama started here. I mean, it's, it started in a couple states, but it was tested here and piloted here in 2012. And as I've talked about and been very open about, I mean, once this group started a Stop Child Spying petition and effort, within days, the Department of Instruction, Jamie Falkenberry, who's Catherine Truitt's right-hand man, and Catherine Truitt, came down on us like a ton of bricks. They called us every name in the book. They called us untrustworthy, basically, fame whores and money making and liars and this, that, and the other. Set us up, tried to get legal problems with us. I mean, we were demonized. I mean, unbelievably.
I'm guessing you were surprised by it.
I was absolutely shocked, because I want you to know that, I mean, this particular guy, Jamie Falkenberry, he's married to a lobbyist that represents CRT products. I had worked with him trying to get a lieutenant governor elected. This came as a surprise to us. But what we realized we were crestfallen. I mean, it was devastating. But
understandably,
what we realized is that this is the same thing now the DOJ is doing, and it's connected to something around Panorama, right? Is that what happened to us here in North Carolina at the state level? Because we opened the wrong box. We didn't know.
That is amen. I want to jump in on that. Once you do that, the thing is, they can never put that genie back in the bottle. What they've got to do is try and stop you or intimidate you from pursuing that. And that's what the DOJ is doing right now.
Yes. And it's happening to us here at a state level. And again, we're even defending ourselves in a lawsuit, a fraudulent lawsuit, which is fraud on the court, but it's being pursued by somebody right now who holds a leadership position in the GOP.
Yep. And that's all it takes is one of those people. And now you have a, quote, bipartisan agreement that Sloan and her crowd are a bunch of radicals and they're the enemy. And all we're trying to do is enlighten these kids.
Right. Well, they're making money off of it, and we've exposed that. The problem is, if you go after an investigative journalist and a team of them, they investigate and they get to the bottom of what's happening. And that's exactly what we're doing. And we're not going to stop. And if anything, it's really reflected poorly on them, because, again, you guys, and I want to tell all of you who are listening, whatever state you're in, when you look under the hood of the education system, you're talking about incredible grift. And here's what I mean. In North Carolina, well over 50% of the state spending, the budget, goes towards education, and it's all kinds of waste, et cetera. I mean, to give you an example, this guy, Jamie Falkenberry, who I'm talking about here, he, he's married to a lobbyist. He's at the Department of Public Instruction. They just got the big fat raises, and he just started another 501c3 that's doing election integrity. He's a government employee. He's doing that. I mean, so you want to talk about grift and money out and corruption, and it's education, Chris.
Well, I can tell you stories from Wyoming, just to give you one little tiny example. And again, the Wyoming superintendent of public instruction back in 2014, wonderful fellow warrior. She could go on for hours about this, but they had seminars, 12, 14-hour seminars in Belgium that the school system throughout the state was going to these seminars. They'd be in Europe for 3 weeks for a 14-hour seminar. And yeah, well, when you have, a state like Wyoming, 500,000 people, it's, I mean, probably Raleigh-Durham has a much bigger population than that. And you have this state, and yet again, billions for quote education. And the problem there, back to the parents, is that when she talked about taking this money away from the education system because it was just for things like that, it was just for illegal abuses of power and perks for these people, and all the parents heard was, she's taking money away from my child's education. And she got blown away in the primary when she was running against the governor in the primary. She got blown away because the parents were convinced that she's going to steal right out of the mouths of their children, and they never looked into it any deeper than that.
Well, here's our position on that, and I think it's a good one, and we're winning a lot of teachers over, and we really do believe this, is that you're talking about unbelievable grift here. I mean, you're talking about in our state, there's well over 600 employees at the Department of Public Instruction that do nothing. They just got a tremendous amount of raise. And they're allowing their staff to be married to lobbyists and make money off of education dollars. And so what we're saying is,
it's a big revolving door.
Teachers deserve that money. Teachers deserve a raise. Good ones. They deserve a raise. And that money needs to be diverted to the classroom. So we're advocating for the Department of Public Instruction to completely go down to 15 employees, down from 700. And that money needs to go to the classroom. Can you imagine? Oh, and by the way, the excuse that Catherine Truitt, our superintendent, used here, and I'm sure they use it all over the country, is that we give a big raise and we're paying way over market value because we need good people. Well, don't you need good people in the classroom?
It's the students are fodder for the engine that feeds them their money. I mean, it's just that simple. And it's always been that way. I wouldn't say it's always been that way, but in, let's say, recent decades, it's been that way, where people are looking for the classrooms to raise their children. They're looking for the classrooms to feed their children. And so you have this big trough of money. And, the more we throw in there, the better my kid is going to do. And thankfully, some of the things that you guys are exposing, people are recognizing that there's a lot of stuff a lot of expensive stuff that's going on in these classrooms that's not really good for my kid. That's a good eye opener. Now let's start looking for accountability among these people. You mentioned a lot of these teachers. We can find out who the good teachers are. I knew some back in Wyoming. They were as frustrated as we were with what's going on in the classroom. Get them on record. They're going to be targeted in the break rooms and stuff. Get the other ones on record too. And this is the big thing. Going back to this Merrick Garland thing, where they were going to label parents as terrorists. Every school board member in the country needs to be put on record by their local constituencies. Do you stand for that, against that? Do you agree with that or not? And if they've already made a statement on one side or the other, that statement stands, because I guarantee you a lot of them, when it first came out, there was an awful lot of school board members that went, yeah, this is what we want. We're tired of having these people show up and mess up our meetings. We're going to be done with this. We're going to get, so they stood with it. Well, all of a sudden there's backlash. Now they're going to try and backpedal. And I know you've talked, some has happened just in the last few days there, backpedaling and apologizing. No apologies accepted. You people staked your claim on that ground. We're holding you accountable to that.
Yeah, I like that, because a lot of elected officials are allowing their constituents to twist in the wind. They're giving no support whatsoever. Of course, our awesome Lieutenant Governor, Rock Robinson, is definitely the exception. I think Phil Berger, who's our lead senator here, made a comment. But yeah, your school board members, you're right, Chris. You have elected people to do a job for you and to represent you. If they've gone against parents, they're not representing we the people anymore. They're representing, we've got them pictured with lobbyists having fun, yucking it up, but they keep their mouth shut and they allow us to do the fighting that's wrong. It's got to stop now.
Yeah, and that's a good point. One of the things, my wife was a lobbyist down in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and one of the things she found, and eventually we figured out, when people responded this way, they're a rhino, they're the enemy. They would, if you, the constituent, fight and win the war, I'll join the battle. If you get that thing passed, it comes across my desk, sure, I'll vote for it, I'll sign it. When, wait a minute, we voted for you. We put out yard signs for you. We went and got you into this office so you could take on this battle, because we're supposed to be at home working our jobs and feeding our families. You're supposed to do this. I'm not supposed to do it for you. In other words, what you're telling me is you really don't want to fight this fight.
Yeah, they don't. They don't. I mean, and it makes us sick. And again, what we're doing is holding, our own accountable, and then others accountable as well. And so I like that. So is there any other role? I mean, there's so many that you've given. What are we, I mean, finding the problem, dealing with the problem. I mean, what is the one thing that you think that we can do in North Carolina and other places that will even further change the trajectory of this battle?
Well, I'll try and limit it to about 6 different things here, but
yeah.
I heard something today from Tony Perkins, Family Research Council, and it actually had to do with Loudoun County. And we've seen all the nightmares going on there. And one of the things they talked about, and I remember seeing this in the past, and it goes back to us accepting the premise that the opposition lays out for us. If I could say, if there's one thing we've got to stop doing, it's that, because they will tell us any lie in the moment to put themselves on the moral high ground, put us on the defensive. And if they have to change a lie next week, this week's lie doesn't matter anymore, because next week it's a different subject. But here's what they talked about. These parents in Loudoun County were trying to find out what was being taught to their kids in the way of sex ed. Well, first of all, they didn't want to show them anything. Then what they said, the school system said that okay, we will let you see it. You can go into a room and look at it. You can't bring in a camera. You can't bring in pencil paper. You can't take notes, because their excuse was, now listen to this, their excuse was, we're worried about copyright infringement. Now, you can go look at math books, you can go look at anything else, but you can't look at these books on sex ed because of copyright infringement. And instead of coming out and saying, no, here's the issue is you're teaching perversion and you're covering it, and I'm calling you out on that, and I'm suing you for that, and you're going to go public with the evidence, because you know what? I own that book, me, the taxpayer, not you, the school system. And so you're not going to prevent me from having access to that book and showing it to the people in this community, because what you're really up to is trying to cover for your perversion. You've got to go on the offensive with it. You can't accept any of their premises. You've got to say, as you said earlier, what is it we're trying to accomplish? In the case of we'll use the sex ed curriculum, we're going to go after anybody who's teaching perversion and pornography in the public schools. We're going to do it. We're going to do it on our terms, not yours, because guess what? I'm the one who has to pay that property tax bill every year that goes primarily to the school system to keep you from starving. And so you don't own that stuff. You don't own the rights to any of this. You work for me. And you, Mr. School Board member, I vote for you or I vote you out. And if I find out that you're criminally colluding in whatever ways, whether it's the graft and corruption, or whether they're being deceitful in order to promote this agenda, which some of them, they're not in it for the money, they're in it for the perversion. Okay, we're going to find this out and identify you. But in every case, the last thing we should ever do is accept the terms of battle that they dictate to us, which they will try to do. You can't do this. You have to say that. You're not allowed to go here. Now they were trying, and they overstepped for the moment and said, you can't show up at the school board meetings, and they were going to try and stop that. And we're saying no. And this is what we've got to keep doing.
Right. Absolutely. No, I like that. I mean, you need to keep reminding them that these schools are ours. They work for us. And I think we've done such a good job, Chris, is that they're cutting us off, right? They're censoring us. I mean, here we're having a devil of a time with school board meetings, like being changed at the last minute, or
every dirty trick they can pull. Yep.
Every dirty trick. And my advice has been to go, if you're objective, thinking of your objectives, if there's 3 or 4 scoundrels on a school board that you want to get off of the school board, it may not do you any good to be in every single meeting. And maybe you want to get 100 people together and go knock on doors in their district, if you want to get them out, and show the pornography to everybody in their district. Let people know.
Yep. The school board already knows it's pornography. It's the people on the street that need to know it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So inform. We're in an information war. And to that point, what I want to just hammer in again, this is Chris's book. It is my field manual. We've talked about, and we're going to do it one day, co-writing a workbook together. We're still going to do it. And
I
then,
hope so.
oh, we will. And then we are going to do, upcoming after the elections in Virginia, we've been invited to do a big presentation for parents there, to show them next level organizing. And that would be, you guys, being very proficient at writing editorials. Got to be able to write op-eds, got to be able to fire them off, FOIAs, got to be able to do that. And then, how to do investigative journalism, because we all need to expose what's going on and report back.
Absolutely. We have to be informed. The single biggest thing that any despotism ever has to do, they don't need the nuclear weapons. They don't need the guns nearly as much as they have to have total control of the flow of information.
Yes.
And that's what you're seeing right now. Look at what happened after January 6th, which I call it was a burning the Reichstag moment there at the U.S. Capitol, that, where it was actually the Nazis who started the fire. If you look at what happened there, every major big tech outfit jumped on the bandwagon, get Trump off of Twitter, get all these conservatives off of Facebook and everywhere else off of YouTube. The whole thing that they saw in that was that they did not want us organized and aware and informed of what they were pulling.
That's right. And the same, nothing has changed, because we see, again, what happened in North Carolina, people in power, they're desperate to hold on to that power. And so they're trying to silence us, both sides. Look, we have a state superintendent and a state school board member. They came forward and wrote out a statement. So now, even if we wanted to, Chris, to get our state to pull out from that compact with the National School Board Association, we can't, because we have a bipartisan agreement that we did that. So our goal here in North Carolina, just so you know, is we have got to make Catherine Truitt apologize for and retract what she said. And more importantly, I talked about this today, we have to get every single rep on record to say, no, I do not agree with the school superintendent. There is not one modicum of proof that you parents are out here creating violence, and we condemn this condemnation of you, our voters and our constituents.
And I'm glad you put it that way, because you hear the hate. If you remember my chapter on labels in that book there, I talked, the very first one I discussed was hate, because we get told we're hateful, and we spend the rest of the whole conversation trying to prove that we're not what they say we are, instead of saying, no, that blanket condemnation that you just hurled at us, that's the embodiment of hate.
Yes.
And I would also say, when you say both sides, I would say, no, it is one-sided, maybe both parties. We've got to clarify that, because that Republican banner might have at one point been something that provided a cover for honorable people trying to fight against what the evil Democrats were up to. It hasn't been that for decades. And the biggest battle that we face across this nation, I think we saw it starting in early 2017, when we had a Republican president, a Republican House, and a Republican Senate. And all of a sudden, Donald Trump couldn't get anything done, because Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan were working for the Democrats the whole time. Yeah. And so it isn't both sides as far as conservatives and liberals. No, it's leftists versus conservatives, and there's a lot of Republicans that are on the left, and they're not honest enough to admit it.
And it's really, I want you to know, guys, it's really the elite. It's sort of the let them eat cake sort of mentality, is that the people in power are going to use people of color. They're going to use Jews. They're going to use gay people. They're going to use them, provide nothing for them, provide no accountability for them. They're going to use them as shields and take all the money. This is a big grift scheme, and children are not learning. The literacy rate, we're sitting here talking about critical race theory. We have a literacy crisis. So all children are being shortchanged. And I'll tell you one more thing, and we're about to close here. This whole this lack of discipline stuff they're pulling, it's called, I forgot the name of it. It's retributive justice or something of that nature. It's so dangerous for gay students. So you've got the left-wing crowd saying, oh, we're not going to suspend students, etc. But they will also say that gay students are being targeted in schools. And I believe that, for bullying and other things. So if you're not going to suspend anyone and apprehend anyone for wrongdoing, how the hell are you going to protect gay students? And so here's what happens with the left. They contradict themselves. That hypocrisy they don't care about, Chris, but the average citizen, they do care.
Absolutely. Losing my voice here, excuse me. One of the premises in my book that we need to remind people of is that leftists never care about any cause they claim to champion. I don't care which you pick your group, environmentalist, minorities, anything that they claim that they're championing. They're not championing those people. They are using those people. They're seizing on their circumstances, using it as a weapon for political leverage.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think people are understanding they've been used. We've been contacted by a lot of gay parents who are like, hey, yeah, we're really uncomfortable with the radicals in our contingency saying that all gay people approve of this, because they certainly do not. We're parents and we don't want that. And so we're not going to allow the elites in charge to use minorities. We're going to call it out.
Yeah, what we're going to do and what we've got to do is enforce the concept of the schools as a forum in which children are educated so they can go forth in life and be functional.
Absolutely.
We're not picking out this social group or that one and advancing their cause, because what you're doing, use a word a few minutes ago of elites, whether it's elites that are looking for money or elites that are looking for social moral validation at the expense of everybody else.
Yes.
They are using those students to advance that cause at the expense of the students. Look at the minority schools. When the inner city schools, if you really wanted to help those kids get a good education, there's lots that could be done. Throwing more money at the same money pit isn't part of it.
Yeah, no, because everybody's got their hands in the cookie jar. So I want to thank you very much for coming on tonight.
Happy to be here. Always good talking to you.
Yeah, I mean, giving us real practical steps, but also to make us feel like we're right and we're not crazy, right? All this stuff that's happening that we've talked about tonight, it happens to everybody, you guys. And so, but the thing is, the only way to get through it is to keep fighting through it. And so we have to keep doing it. We have to stick together. And so, Chris, we'll be talking again soon, but I'm going to plug this book one more time. You can find it on Amazon. It is flat out amazing. I mean, you can see it's all beaten up. There's a candy wrapper in here, you guys, right here. Yeah, that's my bookmark. It's all beaten up because I take it and I'm always with it. So I recommend absolutely getting this book. And thank you very much for this evening.
Thanks for having me on. Keep up the good fight, and we're all in this.
Absolutely. Have a great night.